Hello. In parallel with my activities as a teacher of medicinal chemistry at the School of Pharmacy in Poitiers, I created the company CMAF with my wife Marianne. CMAF is a biomedical research center specialized in carrying out pharmacokinetic studies of drugs in humans. It is at CMAF that I discovered in 1994 Valentonin, the sleep hormone. Valentonin is secreted by the pineal gland during the night, at the same time as two other hormones, melatonin and 6-methoxy Harmelin. These three hormones constitute the sleep-wake system. This discovery provides an explanation in a completely new light of the regulation of the psychological and autonomic lives of the body and the mechanisms of neurological disorders. It leads quite naturally to suitable treatments for these diseases. The most common neurological disorders include sleep disorders, depressive disorders, psychoses, and neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. The mechanisms of all of these neurological diseases are, to date, unknown or very poorly understood. And for this reason, the drugs available to treat them are only lucky finds, whose modes of action are unknown. As we will see, these neurological disorders result from dysfunctions of this endocrine function of the pineal gland. That is the teaching of this discovery. The pineal gland, or epiphysis cerebri, is a small endocrine gland about 8 mm in size, located at the back of the thalamus, whereas the pituitary gland, another endocrine gland and the most proximal, is located at the front of the hypothalamus. One will notice the position of the pineal gland relative to the eyes and retinas, whose cells perceive light. In humans and in all mammals, retinal cells perceive ambient light. This information is processed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, located just above the optic chiasm. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is the true biological clock. It keeps the life of the organism in rhythm, in 24-hour sections, by adapting it to its way of life and its environment. How does that occur? The pineal gland plays a transduction role. It converts the rhythm set by the suprachiasmatic nucleus into an endocrine hormone message via secretion of the three hormones. Let's go back over the three hormones secreted by the pineal gland. Melatonin, discovered by Lerner in 1958. Contrary to what is usually believed, melatonin is not the sleep hormone. 6-methoxy Harmelin, identified in the pineal gland by McIsaac in 1961. 6-MH is a psychostimulant compound having the same intensity as LSD. It is the true agent of psychoses. And Valentonin, that I discovered in 1994 in the pineal gland. It is the true sleep hormone and the key to the discovery of the sleep-wake system. Melatonin is the most powerful known reducer of free radicals in biological fluids. This action is attested by the presence of large amounts of 2-oxomelatonin in the brain. By trapping free radicals, which destroy neurons, melatonin prevents neuron degeneration. 6-methoxy Harmelin, the waking hormone, is a beta-carboline, a tricyclic structure encountered in psychostimulant alkaloids of harmala, such as harmaline. 6-MH increases wakefulness and raises blood pressure and heart rate. Moreover, it causes muscles to contract. It can be described as the daytime hormone. It is the hormone of cognition, consciousness, and thought, a role that has been attributed wrongly to dopamine. Acetylation on the nitrogen atom at position 2 of 6-methoxy Harmelin, the daytime hormone, leads to Valentonin, the nighttime hormone. Here we see a reversal of pharmacological properties. decreased wakefulness with loss of consciousness, which leads to sleep, lower blood pressure and heart rate, and there is muscle relaxation. These three pharmacological properties are features of physiological sleep. They are observed during polysomnographic studies. To understand the functioning of the sleep-wake system, it is necessary to know the modes of secretion of these three hormones by the pineal gland. First, for technical reasons of an analytical nature, I limited myself to the study of the secretion of melatonin by the pineal gland. Indeed, melatonin is the only one of the three pineal hormones whose endogenous plasma levels can be measured. In 1994, we developed at the CMAF Biomedical Research Center a specific and highly sensitive method for assaying melatonin. It brings into play a coupling of gas chromatography to mass spectrometry. This highly sensitive method makes it possible to measure, with accuracy and precision, plasma melatonin concentrations as low as 0.5 picogram per milliliter of plasma. Thanks to this method, in 1994, we were able to establish curves of the changes in concentrations of melatonin secreted by the pineal gland in the plasma for 24 hours during 2 periods of the year. At the end of May, beginning of June, in 12 young subjects, and in October, in 12 elderly subjects. Here are the results for the 12 young subjects. The shape of the curves corresponds to that of a constant rate release of melatonin in the bloodstream by the pineal gland. For all the subjects, the secretions begin around 10 p.m. and stop around 6 a.m. We should note the extreme range of melatonin secretions among the subjects, from 1 to 10. Thus, for young subjects, pineal secretions begin between 10 p.m. and 10:30 p.m., and they stop between 6:05 and 6:20 in the morning. This study was carried out at the end of May, beginning of June. Pineal secretion of melatonin lasted 8 hours on average, whereas the length of night was 8 hours and 20 minutes. Identical results were observed in elderly subjects, studied during the month of October, whereas the length of night increased to 13 hours and 25 minutes. Thus, contrary to what is commonly reported in the scientific literature, pineal secretion of melatonin occurs between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., whatever the season. In this slide, I showed the extreme curves for the two populations of subjects, young and elderly. The amplitude of the quantitative variations in the secretion of melatonin is significant. A factor of 13 is observed between the extremes of pineal secretions in healthy subjects. On average, in this study, pineal secretion of melatonin decreases with age. However, it is in an elderly subject that the high record is recorded, with a maximum blood concentration equal to 124.7 picograms per milliliter. We are thus not all equal with respect to pineal secretion of melatonin. But how to determine the kinetics of pineal secretions of Valentonin and 6-Methoxy Harmelin? Unlike melatonin, it is technically impossible to measure endogenous plasma concentrations of Valentonin and 6-Methoxy Harmelin. This is for reasons of pharmacokinetics, as we'll see later. The results of my work show very clearly that serotonin is the precursor of the three pineal hormones. They are synthesized in the pineal gland from serotonin via an acetylation cascade, thanks to the same enzyme, N-acetyltransferase, or NAT. These three hormonal secretions are contemporaneous. They occur between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. throughout the year. However, the only condition to ensure, in a harmonious process, alternating periods of rest between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and of activity between 6 in the morning and 10 p.m., is that the pharmacokinetic properties of Valentonin and 6-methoxy Harmelin are strictly identical in all mammals with nocturnal sleep, and thus in humans and in dogs. This is why I decided in 2006 to determine the pharmacokinetics of these three hormones in dogs. The values of the main pharmacokinetic parameters of elimination and distribution are presented in this table. Examination of the volume of distribution, VD values, shows that the diffusion rates of VLT and 6-MH from the blood towards the extravascular fluids are respectively 10 and 36 times greater than that of melatonin. Thus, for a given quantity secreted by the pineal gland, the plasma concentrations of VLT and 6-MH would be respectively 10 times and 36 times lower than those observed with melatonin, and therefore impossible to measure. The results of the pharmacokinetic studies of VLT and 6-MH in dogs, identical to those that will be obtained in humans, are extremely interesting. Indeed, after having set the doses of VLT and 6-MH in a ratio of 4:1, I was able to stimulate, using suitable software, the curves of changes in plasma concentrations of the three hormones in humans for 24 hours. Nature designs things well. Indeed, one sees that VLT concentrations in the blood and extravascular fluids, including the brain, are higher than those of 6-MH during the period of rest, between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. This is the 6-methoxy Harmelin, and this is the Valentonin. Conversely, when pineal secretions stop at 6 in the morning, within 15 to 30 minutes, 6-MH concentrations become higher than those of VLT throughout the body. In all mammals, the endocrine function of the pineal gland, that means the secretion of the three hormones, is exerted between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. In this figure, we show the secretion curves in mammals with nocturnal sleep. Thus, at 6 in the morning, the pineal gland has finished its job. What occurs during the 24 hours from 10 p.m. at bedtime? For 8 hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., during the period of rest, physiological sleep repairs and restores our bodies. From 6 a.m., refreshed by a night of sleep, we enter an activity phase. And from 10 p.m., tired after a day of activity, we go to bed in search of rest, and we start a new cycle. The first impulse, the primum movens, occurs at 10 p.m., with the simultaneous release of pineal secretions of the three hormones. Melatonin, a powerful reducer, will eliminate free radicals and protect neurons. In humans and in mammals with nocturnal sleep, and for the pharmacokinetic reasons mentioned before, VLT concentrations in the blood and the brain are higher than those of 6-MH. The consequence of this is decreased wakefulness, which leads to sleep, lower blood pressure and heart rate, and muscle relaxation. At 6 in the morning, pineal secretion stops. One sees in a few minutes a prevalence of 6-MH concentrations in the brain. Consequently, there is a reversal of the preceding actions, with increased wakefulness, which causes and maintains waking until 10 p.m., increased blood pressure and heart rate, increased muscle contraction. Before speaking about the modes and sites of action of pineal hormones, it is essential to specify the roles of serotonin, their precursor. Serotonin can be regarded as a true orchestra conductor in the regulation of both psychological and autonomic lives of the body during the 24 hours of the nycthemeron. It intervenes on two levels, as a neurotransmitter in serotonergic neurons and as a precursor of the three hormones of the sleep-wake system in the pineal gland between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. First, its role as a neurotransmitter. In this diagram, I represented two serotonergic neurons, which relay information via a synapse. The postsynaptic sides of these neurons are equipped with serotonergic 5-HT2C receptors, which transmit a neuronal signal of decreased wakefulness in certain regions of the brain. The activation of 5-HT2C receptors by serotonin is expressed as decreased wakefulness, which can lead to sleep. Let's examine the actions of VLT and 6-MH on these serotonin 5-HT2C receptors. Valentonin has a structural similarity with serotonin that allows it to bind in the immediate vicinity of 5-HT2C receptors. By establishing hydrogen bonds with the peptide bonds of these receptors, it deforms them and makes them more sensitive to serotonin. This activation of the receptor, called allosteric activation, amplifies the neuronal signal and causes decreased wakefulness, which leads to sleep between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Conversely, 6-Methoxy Harmelin competes with serotonin for serotonergic 5-HT2C receptor sites and prevents some portion of serotonin from binding at these receptors. That leads to increased wakefulness and maintains waking from 6 a.m. Valentonin and 6-Methoxy Harmelin modulate dopaminergic D1 and D2 receptors and noradrenergic alpha-2 receptors in the same way. We can now explain what occurs between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the three regions of the brain, at noradrenergic alpha-2 receptors, serotonergic 5-HT2C receptors, and dopaminergic D1 and D2 receptors. From 10 p.m. until 6 a.m., once we are away from daylight, photoneuroendocrine transduction ends in noradrenergic stimulation of pinealocytes, which we can see here. That triggers the pineal secretion of the three hormones in the bloodstream. For reasons of pharmacokinetics, the action of Valentonin is predominant. The result is allosteric activation of the three receptors, with decreased wakefulness and induction of physiological sleep, lower blood pressure and heart rate, and muscle relaxation. Let's go back over sleep. How do we pass from the waking state to the sleep state? The sleep state, with loss of consciousness, appears when wakefulness falls below a certain level that can be described as the sleep barrier. We pass from wakefulness to sleep when we cross this barrier. In normal subjects, during the period of rest, that occurs when the concentrations of Valentonin become higher than those of 6-Methoxy Harmelin. Sleep persists as long as Valentonin concentrations at serotonergic 5-HT2C receptors are sufficient to maintain the level of wakefulness below the sleep barrier. What is physiological sleep? Physiological sleep, which refreshes the body, can be characterized by its electroencephalographic tracing. For each of the 4 to 6 cycles during a night of sleep, 5 sleep stages are observed. 2 stages of slow-wave light sleep, 2 stages of slow-wave deep sleep, and 1 stage of fast-wave rapid eye movements sleep, or REM, also known as paradoxical sleep. In normal subjects, the duration of deep sleep, which is refreshing for the body, should account for about 50% of total sleep, while that of REM sleep should account for 5 to 10%. Let's examine the EEG tracings of sleep in dogs after IV administration of a placebo. For a recording period of 120 minutes, the dogs sleep 27.4 minutes on average, with 51% deep, refreshing sleep, 37% light sleep, non-refreshing, and 12% REM sleep, relative to memory. With the placebo, we find the electroencephalographic architecture of physiological sleep. With zolpidem in dogs, the duration of sleep is shorter than that with the placebo. It will be noted that light sleep, which is not refreshing for the body, predominates. Finally, a collapse of REM sleep is observed, correlating the amnesic effect of this drug. With diazepam, the total duration of sleep is longer than that observed with the placebo, though not significantly different. But, as with zolpidem, light sleep, which is not refreshing for the body, predominates, and a collapse of REM sleep is observed, correlating the amnesic effect of this drug. At the dose of 0.32 milligrams per kilo, Valentonin provides physiological sleep with a predominance of deep sleep, which is refreshing for the body. REM sleep accounts for 10% of total sleep. The total duration of sleep, about equal to the duration of the waking state, is longer, in a highly statistically significant manner, than that observed with zolpidem and diazepam. At the dose of 1.28 milligrams per kilo, the hypnotic effect of Valentonin is spectacular. The total duration of sleep accounts for practically 2/3 of the observation period. The electroencephalographic architecture of sleep corresponds to that of physiological sleep, with the predominance of deep sleep and the presence of REM sleep. To conclude these electroencephalographic studies of these drugs, one can claim that Valentonin, the sleep hormone secreted by the pineal gland between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. in all mammals, provides physiological sleep. Unlike benzodiazepines and related drugs, which provide anesthetic sleep, non-refreshing for the body, with amnesia-inducing effects due to the collapse of REM sleep. What are the consequences of a dysfunction of the pineal gland, responsible for neurological diseases? The 3 pineal hormones are biosynthesized and secreted by the pineal gland always in the same proportions, which means that any quantitative variation, deficit or excess of the pineal endocrine function will affect the 3 hormones in the same way. Thus, any Valentonin deficit, responsible for sleep disorders, will be accompanied by simultaneous deficits of 6-methoxy Harmelin and melatonin. That is why in neurological disorders resulting from hyperfunction of the pineal gland, it will be necessary to administer the 3 hormones in order to act harmoniously on the regulation of the body. Valentonin cannot be administered orally because it is destroyed completely in gastrointestinal fluids. That is why I synthesized between 1994 and 2007 569 orally active synthetic substitutes. But when I realized that it was necessary to co-administer the three hormones in all neurological disorders resulting from hyperfunction of the pineal gland, a single treatment emerged. Oral administration of melatonin and the combination of Valentonin plus 6-methoxy Harmelin given transdermally by using dual reservoir patches. Indeed, only Valentonin can be used because its particular pharmacokinetic properties make it possible to combine it with 6-methoxy Harmelin. So, in order to respect in a precise manner the periods of prevalence of the two hormones during the 24 hours of the Nycthemeron, only the transdermal route is suitable in practice for this two-hormone combination, because it reproduces the curves of the endogenous secretion of these two hormones. Melatonin is thus the marker of production of the three hormones of the sleep-wake system. With regard to treatments for neurological disorders, two situations arise. Firstly, in disorders resulting from a deficit of the three hormones, diagnosed by a too low value of the marker, it is necessary to prescribe hormone replacement therapy comprising a 3 mg oral dose of melatonin at night before bedtime, and a combination of Valentonin plus 6-methoxy Harmelin in a dose ratio of 4:1, transdermally, using dual reservoir patches, applied at bedtime and removed in the morning upon waking. Secondly, in psychotic states diagnosed by a too high value of the marker, higher than 200 picograms per milliliter, I propose the following treatment. In the morning upon rising, and until bedtime at 10 p.m., transdermal administration of a sufficient dose of Valentonin to displace excess 6-methoxy Harmelin by competitive binding at the receptors concerned. What is the mechanism of sleep disorders? Research by Tsyzinski, published in scientific literature, shows that urinary excretion of the sulfur-conjugated metabolite of melatonin in elderly subjects decreases proportionally with the degree of insomnia, which means that among insomniacs, the production of melatonin by the pineal gland is reduced. In conclusion, one can claim that in insomnia patients, Valentonin secretion is not sufficient to lower the level of wakefulness below the sleep barrier. Current treatment consists in administering benzodiazepines or related drugs, such as zolpidem. The activity of these benzodiazepine drugs, due to their allosteric activation of GABA-A-ergic receptors, is well known. It is the cause of the anesthetic, non-refreshing and amnesia-inducing sleep they provide. Furthermore, my discovery explains the origin of the totally unacceptable, undesirable paradoxical effects of these compounds. They have in their chemical structures the pharmacophore sequence of 6-methoxy Harmelin, responsible for blocking serotonergic 5-HT2C receptors. This second pharmacological component opposes physiological sleep by increasing wakefulness in a way identical to 6-methoxy Harmelin. It is an anti-physiological sleep effect, which explains why severe insomnia and anxiety head the list of undesirable effects of these compounds, which is absurd for so-called hypnotic and anxiolytic drugs. As we've just seen, sleep disorders are caused by an insufficiency of pineal production, not only of Valentonin, but also of the two other pineal hormones. It must therefore be remembered that a sleep disorder is a disorder of the sleep-wake system. To guarantee harmonious regulation of the body by the sleep-wake system, it is necessary to administer transdermally the combination of Valentonin plus 6-Methoxy Harmelin in a dose ratio equal to 4:1. Dual reservoir patches should be applied at bedtime, at night, and removed in the morning upon waking. What is the mechanism of depressive disorders? In depressed patients, the sleep-wake system is quantitatively normal. But in depressed subjects, the sleep-wake system is not sufficient to cross the sleep barrier because of the increased level of wakefulness due to stress. Current treatment consists in administering noradrenaline reuptake inhibitors, or NRIs, and serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SRIs. The discovery of the sleep-wake system explains their modes of action. In short, the activity of NRIs and SRIs results, finally, from activation of the same serotonergic 5-HT2C receptors as Valentonin, but not specifically, and for 24 hours. Indeed, NRI antidepressants such as clomipramine or anafranil and SRI antidepressants of the fluoxetine or Prozac type act on all the noradrenergic and serotonergic receptors, respectively, for 24 hours and cause a great number of side effects. My discovery shows that depressive disorders are transient sleep disorders. They must therefore be treated in the same way as sleep disorders, by administering the combination Valentonin plus 6-Methoxy Harmelin in a dose ratio equal to 4:1. Transdermally, during the depressive episode. In patients at risk of or suffering from neurodegenerative diseases, melatonin secretions are much lower or even collapsed. The prevention and diagnosis of neurodegenerative diseases thus involve an assay of melatonin in the plasma from 1 a.m. In patients suffering from Parkinson's disease or Parkinsonian syndromes, insufficient pineal secretion of melatonin is responsible for the degeneration of neurons in the substantia nigra, or locus niger, and the nigrostriatal pathway. By detecting the potentiality of this disorder in at-risk subjects, the disease can be prevented by administering melatonin, 1 3 mg capsule of melatonin at bedtime at night. When the disease is diagnosed, it is necessary to stop its progression by oral administration of melatonin at the dose of 3 mg of melatonin at bedtime at night, and to administer, as for sleep disorders, the combination Valentonin plus 6-Methoxy Harmelin in a dose ratio equal to 4:1, given transdermally. In this combination, Valentonin acts as an allosteric activator of dopaminergic D1 and D2 receptors, in the same way but more effectively than L-DOPA, a dopamine precursor, and ergoline-derived anti-Parkinsonians. In patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease, pineal secretion of melatonin is collapsed. The pineal gland no longer functions. By detecting the potentiality of this disorder in at-risk individuals, the disease can be prevented by oral administration of melatonin, 1 3 mg capsule of melatonin at bedtime at night. When the disease is diagnosed, it is necessary to administer the combination Valentonin plus 6-Methoxy Harmelin in a dose ratio equal to 4:1 at high doses transdermally, using dual reservoir patches applied at bedtime and removed in the morning upon waking. Valentonin and 6-methoxy Harmelin should, if it is not too late, improve sleep and cognitive abilities. My discovery confirms, as McIsaac had suggested, that 6-methoxy Harmelin is the agent of psychoses. In psychotic subjects, pineal secretions of the three hormones of sleep-wake system are excessive. It is undoubtedly because of a very strong secretion of melatonin that Alzheimer's disease has never been observed in these subjects. The hallucinations from which psychotics suffer during the active phase are due to abnormally high levels of 6-methoxy Harmelin. A treatment consisting of the application of a Valentonin patch, applied in the morning upon waking and removed at bedtime at night, should prove effective. This is based on the displacement by competitive binding of excess 6-methoxy Harmelin by Valentonin from the patch at serotonergic 5-HT2C receptors, noradrenergic alpha-2 receptors, and dopaminergic D1 and D2 receptors. In conclusion, the pineal gland can be regarded as the primate of endocrine glands. Endocrine function of the pineal gland appears to have primacy over the regulation of the body. Dysfunctions of this sleep-wake system explain the cause of many neurological disorders. Knowledge of their mechanisms will facilitate their treatments. In this respect, it has allowed me to offer you suggestions. I thank you for your attention.